afternoon and welcome to the 7th event of the 2004-2005 Will WGSS Speaker Series. My name is Susanna Jones and I'm a professor in the English department and also in WGSS. This is a very special year for the series co-sponsors, the Women Involved in Living and Learning program and the Women, Gender and Sexuality Studies program, because it marks the 25th anniversary of these two programs at the University of Richmond. The theme of this year's series is interrogating limits, pushing boundaries, artists, academics, and activists. The 7 events in the series have celebrated artists who are activists, activists who are academics, academics who are artists, and some who are all three. The Will WGSS Speaker Series has always tackled difficult issues for which there are no simple solutions or even common understandings of the underlying problems. This afternoon's speaker is Janisse Ray, whose talk is entitled Questioning the Status Quo, Feminist Challenges. We're pleased to welcome her to Virginia, the state that's home to the Southern Environmental Law Center for the Southeastern region of the United States. Janisse Ray will be introduced shortly by 2 Will students. In following her talk, there will be a half hour for questions and answers, but we hope that you'll continue talking beyond this room by taking your ideas and your questions, your comments and your criticisms to classes, to the library, and back to your own communities. And also, after the questions and answers, there are books in the back of the room, and you can certainly purchase them from the university bookstore. We want to thank the many sponsors of this year's speaker series: Cultural Affairs, the Botwell Speaker Series, the Will Women Studies Speaker Series. Many departments around the campus have brought you Janisse Ray. We also want to thank the people who put this series together: Elizabeth Bruner, a member of the English faculty and former coordinator of WGSS, Holly Blake, director of the Will program, and Elizabeth Sheehan, assistant director of the Will program, and also Karen O'Connell, the administrative assistant to the Will program, whose year-long efforts have made this series a reality. And with that, I'm pleased to introduce 2 other Joneses, Claire and Beth. Claire is a member of the class of 2005, and she's majoring in political science and WGSS and minoring in history. And Beth is a member of the class of 2008, and she's thinking of majoring in English and minoring in education and WGSS.
Writer and naturalist Janisse Ray is the author of 2 nonfiction books and numerous articles. Ecology of a Cracker Childhood, her best-known book, is about growing up in a junkyard in the ruined longleaf pine ecosystem of the Southeast. Ms. Ray's book tells how a childhood spent in rural isolation, living in the country but not even knowing how to swim, grew into a passion to save the almost vanished longleaf pine ecosystem that existed before the region was ever called the South. The memoir is described as both a social and natural history, and has been hailed as, quote, a well-crafted, poignant, and informative portrait, both of Ray's family and of what was the mightiest forest in the South. Reviewer Ann Raver of the New York Times said, quote, the forests of the South have found their Rachel Carson. Author Wendell Berry reminds all of us that, quote, to tell that story as well as she tells it here is at once to show what has gone wrong and to light the way ahead. This book clearly is only a beginning. Ecology of a Cracker Childhood brought Ms. Ray numerous awards, including the Southeastern Booksellers Award for Nonfiction in 1999, the Southern Environmental Law Center 2000 Award for Outstanding Writing on the Southern Environment, and the Southern Book Critics Circle Award for Nonfiction in 2000. It was also named as the book all Georgians should read in 2002. Despite these prestigious awards, Ms. Ray continues to be an ardent activist for the causes she has written about.
Although today's talk focuses on Janisse Ray's nonfiction book, Ecology of a Cracker Childhood, and the challenges presented by ecofeminism, Janisse Ray, nevertheless, has published many other essays and poems in journals and magazines, such as Audubon, Body and Soul, Hope, Natural History, Oprah, and Sierra. She is also anthologized in The Woods Stretched for Miles, a collection of Southern nature writing, Wild Heart of Florida, Writer in Florida's Wildlands, American Natural Writing 2000, and Signs of Hope. As an activist, much of Ray's work focuses on opposing global capitalism, keeping corporate oppression in check, preserving wildness, and slowing the rate of logging worldwide. Ray is an activist outside of her writing as well. She is a founding board member of the Altamaha River Keeper, a group dedicated to repairing Georgia's mighty Altamaha River and helping form the Georgia Nature-Based Tourism Association. She worked to save the 3,400-acre Moody Forest in her home county of Appleton. Ray's visit to the University of Richmond today is an example of her dedication to speaking on behalf of the besieged southern landscape. Overall, she emphasizes the need to remake a world in which people can be fully human. Join me in welcoming Janisse Ray.
Every morning from the center of us, a bear rises, roaring out of swamp mud and tupelo leaves, out of darkness. She is silver, shining with the light of the world. This bear begins to speak in a voice that sounds like our own, but it's the voice of the earth itself, a deep rumbling that shakes the sashes and rattles cups on the table. Have you forgotten you are a child of sun and rain? You belong to me. Element by element, you will return to me. And when you return, you will be welcomed home. You will have become the Newman, my child, syllables of breath the earth sings. What a great honor to be able to speak to you today, and I thank you so much for giving me a little piece of this sunny, glorious, precious afternoon to hear me speak and for us to be together. I am grateful to be able to address you because I love this world and I'm tremendously worried about it. And I think that a great deal of the solution lies in us. The first thing I'm going to do is read you a small piece of an essay that was published in Orion magazine. It was written for Pew Charitable Trust, and it's called On the Bosom of This Gray and Wasted Land, I Will Lay My Head. 6 years ago, I returned from Montana to my Georgia homeland. I wanted to live where I knew the people around me, where my son could run barefoot and pick blackberries and climb magnolias. We moved into my grandmother's heart pine house on land my great-grandfather farmed, amid tobacco fields and cow pastures. In my mind, the return held two possibilities. Either I would fail and leave after a year or two, or I would revitalize my grandmother's farm, buying it piece by piece from aunts and uncles, and I would die where 7 generations of grandparents had died before me. After 17 years away, I somehow expected that the forest ruin I had seen as a child had been arrested. Instead, it had accelerated. What I found was a fragmented landscape with only few pieces of true forest left here and there. For the past decade, the South has been in the middle of a cutting cycle, one that equals the one we had at the turn of the 19th century when most of our old growth was cut. An environmental ethic is new to us Southerners, so the timber industry goes mostly unregulated and unchecked. To see the worst of it, I fly over eastern Tennessee on the clearest day of the year with pilot Larry Peterson. We're 3,500 feet high in a tiny Cessna that reminds me of a white dragonfly, found for one of the biggest clear cuts in the southern United States. Larry is a pilot with South Wings, an environmental flying service. Severe clear, we call this, he says through headphones. The earth is green from near to far, chartreuse to emerald to aquamarine. We begin to see the logging. This will give you an idea of what the land looked like before we got so greedy, Larry said. The trees are soft looking, almost like giant moss, so thick they completely hide the ground. Then we begin to see the logging. Where the green turns to gray, that's clear cutting. The clear cuts are huge and odd shaped. The world down there is a big green buffalo, and her hair has been worn off in painful, rawhide colored patches. We can see 50 to 70 miles in any direction. There are more clear cuts and more. We come upon a crew of loggers at work, although we can't see the people, only equipment. Far below, toy log trucks wait on a road scuffed white in places and rutted. The road runs alongside a pile of cut trees that looks like a faggot of twigs of equal length. The drivers haul make-believe trees away in small handfuls. We bank to watch a feller buncher at the edge of a stand. The machine looks gentle. The way it swings its wide arm toward a standing tree and hugs it close, and then the tree, as if in absolute trust and loyalty, topples slowly to the ground. What the loggers see ahead of them down there is not what I see. They see a day's work. I see the systematic removal of the earth's vegetation. This land was meant to be covered by a thick forest green comforter, stitched with rivers and studded with lakes, not this thin, threadbare quilt with great patches missing. We fly over miles of clear cut until we're in what may be the middle of destruction. Everywhere I look, in every direction, the forests have been carved with logging roads and the trees taken away. 15,000 acres laid to the ground in the past 5 years. Suddenly I am weeping over this land, my home, the southern United States. Larry banks the plane away. I wanted you to see it, he said. You don't need to be punished. I'm going to skip the next sections that are statistics, because I can tell you that longleaf pine, which once covered 93 million acres in the South, is down, is gone, 99% of it was gone by 1995. 99% of natural stands of longleaf pine gone. Once covered the entire southern coastal plain uplands from southern Virginia all the way to East Texas. You have some longleaf pine, by the way. There are 5 babies growing right beside the Jepson. I don't know if y'all seen it, the Jepson Alumni Center. In the past 20 years, from 77 to 97, timber harvest increased by 50% in the South. Today, the South produces 2/3 of all wood used in the United States. The number of chip mills in the South has increased by, what's the percentage? Chip mills tripled in 15 years. Since 1987, we've had over 100 new ones built. One day, my young son and I drive past the huge sawmill on the outskirts of our hometown of Baxley. Silas and I count the logging trucks lined up, waiting to dump their loads of pine trees. 15. The trees already cut and piled make a brown, barky mountain. The tractor trailers look small beneath it. Mama, my son asks, don't they have enough yet? The worst cut for me was John's Pond, a woods between Hoboken and Folkestone, Georgia. I passed on my way to Jacksonville. The forest was big, 2 miles of glorious, mature longleaf, a real forest in this land of fields and trailer parks and brush. Wiregrass grew beneath the trees, and I spotted bluebirds and Sherman's fox squirrels. I'm certain that Bachman's sparrows and gopher tortoises and indigo snakes lived there, maybe flatwing salamanders. It was a one-of-a-kind forest, the last of the great southern uplands. It gave me great hope that we might be able to keep some of our forests intact, even with more than 80% of our land in private hands. One day, speeding toward the airport, I saw that a section of John's Pond was gone, turned into a square of skidder marks and tree limbs. In the spread of wet dirt sat a loader, a bulldozer, a tree cutter. I was alone in the car, and for a solid mile I screamed. The next time I passed John's Pond, the foresters were replanting. You should be happy about the planting, my friends tell me. It won't be a parking lot. It won't be a forest either. I have a dream in which I am canoeing with my husband. The stream enters a concrete road culvert, which runs shallow through red clay. I'm prying us along with a paddle when I see a cluster of violent green swallows in the culvert. They fly toward us, trying to get out. One hits my hair and plunges into the neck of my sweater, then burrows down my back. I reach into my sweater, close my hand around the bird, and draw it out. The young swallow is desperate to escape, struggling frantically against closed fingers. As I reach out my arm to let it go, at that very moment, it flings its head backwards so hard against my fist, it breaks its neck. Horrified, I wake and recount the dream to my husband. He listens and later turns to me with a question. What would you do today, he asked, if you knew beyond a doubt that you would not fail? He would like to stand on the edge of the Grand Canyon, step off and fly like a raven. I've never wanted to fly. I'm earthbound, terrestrial. I would return the earth to the way it was, I said. I'm going to skip to a poem here and come back in a minute and read you the last section of that after I've talked to you a little bit. This poem is about bird banding, and if you're a biology student, you know that ornithologists study birds by catching them in these nets, walking up and down the net every 5 or 10 minutes, taking the birds out, and then they, well, you'll find out in the poem what they do. It's called bird banding with the biologists. Rufous-sided towhee, when I hold you, you're mine. And when I release, you pause unblinking before you take to wings not one of us has. I love that. White-throated sparrow, Carolina wren, must I capture you, to know you? And how lucky I am this dawn to walk the mist net, a human spider web appearing and disappearing in the weak fog like milk poured down coffee. The sun yawns and stretches. Oh, cardinal, you take my breath as I draw you from the cotton bag, careful of your sharp beak. You're the color of spilled blood and of an oak fire's embers. No human has feathers red enough for me. The man from Antarctica tells me of living in a tent with a year's supply of food, cans and cans of it, Shakespeare to read, poetry to write in the solid, white, icy silence. The penguins are there. The bottom of their colony, he says, is hotter than hell. It will disintegrate tin cans. He comes back, tied with bags like a bird hunter. We record their weight, sex, body fat, give them their registry number. On a tiny silver bracelet they wear around wishbone legs till death. And then, for a moment, we see them for what they are. Creatures of the air, birds in hand, songboxes of spring mornings migrating across landscapes of our design. And we praise them. Oh, kinglet, oh, oriole, tell us what you know. Bird banding to the biologist. People call me an environmental activist, a tree hugger, nature rider, and I'm not offended by any of those things. But what I say I'm doing is not simply working to help clean up the Ottawa River or keep President Bush from drilling for oil in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, or from logging, keep the president from logging the Tongass National Forest, that glorious national forest in Alaska. I'm not just trying to help reduce our dependence on fossil fuels or help stop global climatic destruction. Or I'm not just trying to bring regulations to the timber industry. What I say I'm trying to do is very important. I say that I'm trying to help remake a world in which you and I can be fully human. So you have to ask yourself, what does it mean to you to be fully human? You were born on this beautiful planet as a human being. What's your definition of what you're supposed to be? And I've come up with 5 things. I'm sure there are more, and people are going to have different things than I do. But first of all, I think to be fully human means to be engaged with your landscape, to know something of the cycles of seasons, of weather, of moons, of phases. The second thing is to understand and hopefully participate in production and acquisition of your food, your shelter, your water, your warmth, so you know where the electricity is coming from that lights our faces, even as we sit here today. That you know if a drop of water falls at your front door, what your watershed is, where it goes, until it winds up in the Atlantic Ocean. So that you understand for every minute of every hour of every day that you're a biological creature, absolutely dependent for your survival on the processes of the earth. The third thing is I personally think that we're sensual creatures, that we have this tremendous capacity, not only of the 5 senses, the ones I'm talking about, but also of these hidden senses that we don't think about very much. A sense of danger, a sense of place, a sense of time, a sense of direction, a sense of being watched. There are just tons and tons of them. I'm going to give you an example of one. On a college campus, a study was done of freshmen. As they arrived at college, they were taken to a place and asked to find their way back. The ones who had the worst sense of direction were put in dorm rooms with their heads facing to the north. And 6 months later, they were given the same study, a different place, the same thing. The ones who had slept for 6 months with their heads to the north, who had done the worst before, now did the best. So maybe there is something to our connection to this earth. The fourth part to me of being fully human means to be absolutely engaged with each other. Your parents, your siblings, your children, your lovers, your husband, your spouses, your partners. And beyond that, your communities, your neighborhoods, your clans, your country people. No matter sexual gender preference, no matter religion, no matter country of origin, no matter color of skin, that nothing gets in the way between my heart and your heart. The most important work to be done is the work of opening the heart. And that's the work of humanity, of being fully human. The last thing makes some people nervous, and that is, I believe that part of being human is to recognize that we're spiritual creatures. I don't mean religion. I'm not a churchgoer. I'm talking about that unnameable, mysterious, invisible thing called spirit that I think joins all living beings to each other. Animals to humans as well. So it makes the work that you do, the work of, whatever you do, the work of teaching, bringing light to young people, or the work of organizing a women's shelter, or the work of being the greatest parent that you can be, the work, whatever your work is, the work of farming, it makes it spiritual work. The work of remaking a world in which we could be fully human. You have to ask yourself, before you start any career, any project, any journey, does what I'm about to do elevate the dignity of our humanity? Does it elevate the magnanimity of the human being? And if you're fixing to build a Walmart where a half a mile down the road there's an empty shopping center, I'm not sure that elevates the dignity of our humanity. I think a lot about fragmentation. You see it when you fly over Orlando or Richmond or Pittsburgh, the earth, just chopped into smaller and smaller pieces, paved. And I think there was a time where we had to work on women's issues. There was a time where we had to liberate people of color in this country. There was a time where we had to give children rights. The work is not done on any of those things. But I think that the work right now is figuring out how individually and collectively you can lead lives of wholeness in all this fragmentation. You can hang on to the things that really matter, which are, I could ask any of you in this room, what is sacred to you? You would all say the same things. You would say, my family, my lover, good food, my history, my culture. That's your job. Figure out how you are going to live a life that makes sense. Because I think the fragmentation in the landscape is mirrored in human society, so that we have more marginalized individuals like the young man who on the reservation who just went in and shot up his high school, or John Mallow shooting out the back of that truck, of that van near Arlington. Is that where it was? We have more broken families, more crippled communities, people living next door to each other and not knowing each other. That is fragmentation. It's a dangerous thing. I used to think that, I'm going to tell you a joke before I do something pretty wild. You probably never heard what I'm fixing to do, talk about, and I may be the only person who's ever talked to you about this, but I can assure you that I'm not the only person who ever will. The joke is this. There was an old man sitting on a park bench, and this young man came up and sat on the park bench beside him. The young man had dyed hair. It was out to here. It was dyed red, green, blue, orange. The old man was staring at him and staring at him. Finally, the young man said, "Old man, what you staring at? Ain't you ever done anything wild in your life?" The old man said, "Yep, I made love to a parrot one time." The young man was looking at him. He said, "I'm just sitting here trying to figure out if you're my son or not." Ain't you ever done anything wild? So I'm fixing to do something wild. I used to think that if we saved enough wild places and we passed enough public policy, regulations, meaning like we made the cutting of any old growth tree illegal, not just immoral, a sin, but illegal. If we did those two things, enough of them, we would be able to stop the hemorrhaging of wild things from the planet. And I no longer believe that to be true. Because I think the root cause of environmental loss is our economic system of global industrial capitalism. It's global because we've managed to spread it globally through television and free markets. It's going to fail because it requires more and more of itself to solve its own problems. Can you understand what I'm saying? It's going to fail. It's inherently violent because it requires itself to solve its own problems. Let's just say that you and I are going to go in business making this podium. I'm going to head the company and you're going to be my stockholders. The motto of capitalism is more, more, more. Everybody wants more. You put a little bit of money in the stock market and you want a lot out. The model is an uphill line, just like this. So, in order to appease you, the stockholders, I have to log more and more pine trees, have to drill more and more wells to make this laminate paint and these plastic parts. We have to mine more and more bauxite and steel. Do you see what I'm saying? To sell more and more, we have to produce more and more, and the earth cannot sustain it. Global industrial capitalism always comes at the expense of local ecosystems, local communities, local cultures, and local economies. I know you want to know what we can do about that. It seems such a huge problem, and it is. And I know of a few things. And one is we can keep on the way we're going. Let me just back up and say, we are told that prosperity, that globalism is global capitalism. is going to bring prosperity for the all. And that's why we should pursue it. But what we're seeing is that the gap between the wealthy and the poor gets wider and wider. The gap narrows instead of shrinks. Global capitalism is not doing what it was set forth to do. And into it, we give it proxy to produce whatever we want, whatever we think we want. And what it comes at the expense of are our farms, our farmers, our watersheds, our native ecosystems. We lose all that. We can keep on the way we're going. And we will soon have to police natural resources worldwide, exactly what we're doing when we're guarding the oil fields in Iraq. We will police our resources worldwide and likely be the subject of more terrorist attacks. The second thing is we can come up with a whole new system. We know communism didn't work. Its people went hungry. It didn't produce enough. Capitalism isn't working because it's producing too much. We are viciously wasteful. And you drive any affluent neighborhood, really any neighborhood on trash pickup day, and you can see exactly what I mean. Things are being thrown away. They should not be thrown away. You go back to the garbage can in this room and look in, and you see things being thrown away that shouldn't be there. Maybe the new system is sustainabilism. I do not know. I think this is a job you inherit. I'm going to give it my best shot to figure out what to do. It's really going to take smarter, more dedicated people to jump on this one. What are we going to do about capitalism? Herman Daly at the University of Maryland, an economist, is suggesting a steady state economy that uses as its model a straight line. That would be sustainable, meaning we take enough for our survival, but we don't compromise the survival of future generations. The third thing is that we could keep the same system we have, capitalism, and somehow imbue ethics into it. So if you are Martha Stewart and you're doing insider trading, you go to jail. If you're Enron executives and you are aware of thievery and deceivery, you pay the punitive price for that. If you want to manufacture tires, then you figure out how to do it without polluting the rivers with mercury and copper and arsenic. You pay women what they're worth. You don't hire children. You don't send your manufacturing jobs to Pakistan and India and China and Indonesia where the women are being paid 10 cents an hour to make t-shirts that we can buy for $10. That's unethical. I think that with enough sane policies and enough strict regulations, we could bring ethics back to capitalism. The fourth thing is what my husband and I, my family, are doing, and that is the last thing to combat a global capitalist economy is to try to recreate decentralized local economies. So, be aware of how you spend every dollar you spend. Make as much of your own goods as you can. Grow a garden. Have chickens in your backyard, as we do. If you're going to the store to buy greens and you pass a farmer on the side of the road selling collards, stop and buy from the farmer. Support your local community. Eat at local restaurants. Try never to go into a chain store. Sometimes I think that capitalism is not going to work because the end point of competition is that one thing wins. If we're all in a foot race in this room, one of us is going to win. And you know who I think is winning in this country? I think it's Walmart. Walmart is now the 19th largest economy in the world. The 19th, following Sweden. You understand what that means? It's the largest employer in the United States. We never shop at Walmart. Every dollar you spend is a vote and a decision. So when you say, okay, we have to recreate local communities, you have to realize that although we have not progressed beyond the need to wear clothes, eat food, live in houses, we have progressed beyond what we call the domestic arts. The ones not only relegated to women, but also to men, the husbandry and wifery of the world. I'm not asking all of you to return to being husbandmen and wives in that sense of the word. Although, so there's our problem, is if we're going to have decentralized local economy, the question we ask is, where are the people? How are we going to do this? Because most of us only are available to the land recreationally, biking, hiking, camping, fishing. We don't, as Mary Austin says, summer and winter with the land. I know it's a lot for you to think about, but it's got to be thought about. It's unrealistic to expect wasteful industries to be conservers, and obviously we must lead, in part, the public life of protesters, complainers, petitioners, advocates, and supporters of stricter regulations and saner policies. Good economic behavior is more possible for us than for the corporations. We must try in every way we can to make good economic sense in our lives, in our households, in our communities. That's a quote from Wendell Berry. If you're more interested in this subject, I would recommend Wendell's book called In the Presence of Fear. It's a tiny little book he wrote after September 11th. It really examines the real reasons for that attack. It's a brilliant book. There are other people. Paul Hawkins, right, in his book Natural Capitalism, writes exactly about this. Herman Daly at the University of Maryland. I submit to you that lots of thinking has to be done about this. It's uncharted territory, just waiting. How desperately far our heavily industrialized, unethical, globally greedy economic system takes us from the souls of ourselves. If we can stay entertained enough with golf and shopping malls and hundreds of TV channels to choose from, if we can stay distracted enough with new products, must-have products, if we can stay scared enough of SARS, of serial killers, of international terrorism, we might not stand up and revolt about a system that rips away from us the things that really matter in the core of our beings, the things that elevate the dignity of our human spirits, yours and mine. I have two more things I want to talk to you about, but I need to know what time it is and how we're doing. How many minutes we got left?
30 minutes.
30 minutes. So we want to do questions too. Okay. I'm going to just tell you about this and not read it. What I found, I fell in love with lonely. But what I found is if you pull the loose thread of anything, in this case for me, lonely pine, you find that it's connected to everything else on the planet. So lonely pine led to our economic system of capitalism. And that quickly led to me, for me, to our political systems. And so, I who love this world, this earth, I who love wildness, find myself often at political rallies. I find myself holding signs. I find myself protesting the inauguration, protesting National Convention, the Republican National Convention. I find myself marching a lot. I think right now it's where, until we have more campaign finance reform, and until, let's See, campaign finance reform, and until we have elections that are fair and square, meaning there's paper trails in every state that says you actually voted and you voted for who you thought you voted for, we will never be free, we will never have a democracy, and we will never get any of the other things that need to be done. This essay is called Pleading the First Amendment, which is our ability to speak freely, which is what I'm doing today. But more importantly than me talking to you about speaking out, I want to talk to you about courage. There's time to read a piece of that. Every day last spring, when my husband left for class, he made a sign, handwritten in red ink on the back of a whole sheet of paper, and clipped it to his backpack. It told the number of coalition soldiers killed so far in Iraq. Months ago, when I watched him make the first sign, it said, I remember distinctly the number, it said 598. Below that, he wrote the figure for Iraqi citizens. There's no real count, it's just an estimate, since nobody in our government, at least publicly, is keeping track. One evening, we had supper at the Blues Diner in downtown Oxford, Mississippi, where we'd been living for the year. My husband, Raven, a Vietnam-era veteran, carefully positioned his backpack, sign out, so when we sat down so that anybody passing would see it. When we stood to leave, I watched nervously as he took a long time to hoist his backpack and pull his gloves and hat on. There was that sign flapping in front of everybody in the restaurant. I was raised in Georgia, in the particular brand of gentility that makes public dissent reproachable. Good Southern girls are docile and pretty. They are not disagreeable or obstreperous. A subliminal thread of violence runs through most societies, but in the South, the layer of manners that protects us from that violence is breathlessly thin. We've been a region of lynchings, duels, shootings, whippings, church burnings. Here, the need to be quiet has been a matter of self-preservation, and although I have worked hard to overcome it, the voice of refinement still whispers in my ear, don't cause a scene. When I was yet a young woman, my love of nature funneled me toward a life of activism. How could I not defend the wild places where I learned so much and found such hope and comfort? I learned that protest simply required stepping through fear. Fear of ostracism, fear of attack. Fear is a temporary phenomenon. I came to understand that what I stood to lose by being quiet and complacent was greater than what I stood to lose by protesting. After a while, I comprehended that environmental destruction is intrinsically and logically connected to every brand of oppression on the planet, and that destruction of wildness was one of many forms of violence against this glorious experiment called life. And so, in early 2003, when President Bush was trying to drum up support for an attack on Iraq, I was incredulous. People said upcoming war, but I refused to use that adjective. All over the country, friends were protesting, part of a great global outpouring of dissent that was effectively ignored. We were at our family farm near Baxley, Georgia during the weeks when citizens attempted to stop an invasion that seemed unnecessary but inevitable. My hometown took great pride in being solidly loyal to government. The weekly newspaper ran home-drawn editorial cartoons of Osama bin Laden.